Okay, welcome everybody. It's Shalane. I am going to talk a little bit about carbs today. This is something that we love to hate. And since you guys are here, I'm going to send you my notes. Dave was really great today in sending me 2 articles, which I put in the slideshow. And right after that, then we're going to get to discussions and talking about some of the stuff that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to then go into some of our fitness challenges from last week, and then work on fitness challenges for next week. All right, so carbs. Today we're going to cover why we need carbs, carbs and blood sugar, 3 types of carbs, caveat on low carb diets, and then how many carbs should we eat to lose weight. So I try to make these topics a little smaller so then we can actually get to the discussion later, because I think that's where we get the most benefit out of it. That's where we get the most support for each other, and because it's easy to learn something, but it's hard to do it, right? So unless we make some sort of change, that's going to have to come about a change from our thinking, and it's probably not going to be from slideshows that I show you. All right, that being said, carbs, they have a bad rap. Everybody's like, oh, that's something that's bad for you. That being said, carbs serve an important role in our body function. They are a macronutrient. So a lot of people on the internet, they're all talking about macros. I got to get my macros in. All it is are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, a percentage of those. And our body needs all 3 of those in relatively large amounts every single day, depending on our level of activity and our age and all sorts of different criteria. But we need those. We also need micronutrients, which are the tiny things like vitamins and minerals. So those are things that our body needs, and if we don't get them, our body's now out of whack. Not one is more important than the other. So we need all of them, including carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is the main fuel for vital organs like your kidneys, your central nervous system, and your brain. So a lot of times we try to skip carbs and we don't give ourselves enough nutrients or fuel for our organs. Now, when we digest carbohydrates, it turns into blood glucose. So that is another thing for blood sugar, right? So that is the most easily common energy source for our body and any sort of activity. So that could be from breathing to sleeping to exercising. We need energy, different amounts, etc. Now, when we have chains of glucose in our bloodstream, it needs we need that for working out. So if you don't have any sort of blood sugar in your system, you actually can not have enough cardio activity. So when we do cardio work, the main thing that gets burned is glucose. All right, so that's from carbs. So the good news is everybody needs carbs, right? Now, the carbs and blood sugar is really important because of it's a big concern for people with diabetes, right? But why is it important, and how does it affect our systems? So basically, when we eat carbs, it turns into blood sugar anywhere between minutes to hours after you've eaten. So 90 to 100% of the carbs that we eat hit our bloodstreams. Now, if you have these big spikes of energy because we have something that burns very quickly, and whereas something that burns slowly, like fat, then in a couple of hours, we are already out. Hi, Cuckoo. Welcome, welcome. So when we have carbs and we eat them, the digestible carbs gets broken down to blood sugar, So as blood sugar rises, the pancreas creates insulin. So when we have insulin, the blood cells, absorb the blood sugar through all of our exercise and using, like, when we sweat and when we're walking, when we're breathing. Then the levels of blood sugar in our bloodstream starts decreasing. Also, before we eat, our glucose levels are low. So insulin levels are low. And then when we eat, then the insulin levels rise, right? Now, the pancreas starts making these hormones that then signals the liver to release the stored sugar that's in your blood. And this mix of insulin and this stored sugar goes throughout your body, and especially your brain, and make sure your brain and your body has enough sugar to move and to be powered. So that's our fuel. Now, when we have too much blood sugar in our system, our body gets used to it, and it does not make insulin anymore. And then so the insulin production eventually stops. So this is over years and years of having too much carbs in our system, and that can cause type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is one of these things that is preventable 100% of the time, but this takes years and years of effort, right? So now we have a lot of things that are in the news is low-carb diets, right? So Dave sent me this really nice article, a couple of nice articles about low-carb diets. So basically what these diets do is restrict the number of calories a person gets by limiting their food sources from carbs, good and bad carbs. So keto and Atkins, these are very big common diets, and you see these names. What do they do? They basically want you to not eat refined carbohydrates, sugar, fructose, corn syrup, and flour. Those are all good things. They want to get your body metabolism to start from burning glucose or sugar as a fuel to burning the stored body fat, which is ketosis. So that all sounds great, right? The problem is when your glucose levels are low, insulin levels are also low, right? And this ketosis happens. It goes to switch into the fat source as a dietary fuel for energy, and it helps a person lose body fat and weight right away. Unfortunately, this is not really sustainable scientifically. So then when we eat low carbs and we're not eating carbs, and we start eating other things as food, we start eating things like large amounts of proteins and fats, because those are the other two macronutrients that are out there, right? So the total of the three is carbs, fats, and proteins. So when you take out the carbs, now you have fats and proteins. And that leads to a lot of issues, such as cholesterol levels and rates of risk of heart disease. And then also excess protein also then turns into fat. And then you have extra amino acids. So that will lead to things like dehydration, calcium loss. Too much protein can cause kidney dysfunction and even cancer. And then a lot of times, because we're not eating carbohydrates, you're having too little fiber, and this would cause constipation and or diarrhea. From the diarrhea actually comes from eating mostly too much dairy food or processed food with the lack of fiber. So overall, being low carb is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you eat too many proteins and fats, it's not necessarily a good thing. So there's actually a lot of studies that indicate that low carb diets promote fast weight loss, but it's short term. So don't feel so bad about not eating carbs. Yay, everybody can eat carbs, right? All right. Three types of carbs. No, these are not the types of carbs we're talking about. Oops, I went back. So the three types of carbs are starches, sugars, and fibers. Those are the three different types of carbohydrates. Now, it's different to understand the different types of carbs because they each digest differently. So the faster and the speed that they digest and directly affects how fast they hit our bloodstreams, right? So prior to doing any of these things in diets, definitely check with your doctor, do the research, talk to a nutritionist if it really is something that is concerning to you or if you have any sort of health issues. All right, so starches. These are usually complex carbohydrates. So that's good because they just digest slower. So we want complex carbs because it hits your bloodstream over a longer period of time. So these are things like vegetables, like peas, lima beans, even sweet potatoes. We also have things like whole wheat and whole grain and refined processed grain. So those things tend to be, the whole grain tends to, as you can guess, take longer because they have different layers. There's the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. So these three different layers make the body work harder to digest the food. And then the stuff on the outside, some of those layers are the final thing that we're talking about, fiber. So those are not digestible, right? So these things are really good because, again, it is slowing down the digestion rate and it makes you feel fuller longer. Now, refined or processed grains don't have layers and they're just ground up, so we digest them really, really quickly. The problem with those is that we get the blood sugar spikes that we were talking about, and a lot of times the portion sizes are different than what we expect, right? That's the hard part that I have. Hi, Guzang. So when we usually have just one portion of pasta, nobody has a third of a cup. We always eat a plate of pasta. That is really 3 servings of carbs. So that's actually like 45 grams of carbs, right? So that really will spike our blood sugar up way too high, and then we can't use all of it. And it's now being stored, and then we might have problems with insulin production later. Okay, so sugar. This is a whole nother topic that we can talk about. But basically, there's natural artificial sugar. Again, the sugars, as soon as we digest them, hits our bloodstream and turns into blood sugar right away within minutes, right? Fruit is a healthy way that causes sugar to go into our system a lot slower. Again, serving size is something that we need to think about. Now, when we have too much sugar, it can have a lot of negative health effects. So when we have sugar, we get that instant sugar in our system, the blood sugar, which then goes to our brain, and our brain actually thinks of it as something that's awesome, right? So then it's kind of like a drug for our brain because it's like something good for our brain. So our brain is like, oh, I want more and more of it. So the more sugar that you have, the more you crave sugar. And it leads to things like not just weight gain, but blood sugar problems like diabetes, increased risk of heart disease, and other dangerous health risks. So we can find sugar in things like fruit juices. They can have tons of sugar. Fruit, it could be in vegetables like carrots, peppers. We have a lot of sweet bakery items that, ice cream, easy to sodas, we all think about that. But things we don't think about is maybe like ketchup or barbecue sauce. And then actually milk and yogurt and all of those types of desserts also have sugars in them, even if it's all natural milk. Milks have sugars. So naturally, it's a carb. Last one is fiber. Also I can talk another whole topic about this. But basically, they're soluble, insoluble fibers. And this is what helps with your digestion. So now when I was younger and my grandmother was alive, Google, I used to call Nai every day from the trading floor, right? And she would always ask me how I pooped. Always ask me, how did you poop today? Did you poop today? How was it? And this is a very big thing because your poop really is helpful in telling you about your health. Now, the fiber also helps you feel fuller after a meal because it slows the digestion again. So anything that helps you slow your digestion is good. The crazy thing is most of us don't get enough fiber. So only about half of us, we only get about half of what's recommended for us daily. So we're supposed to eat 25 to 30 grams of fiber every day. Most of us don't get that. And then Dave sent this really good article about high carb diets for patients with diabetes, which is kind of counterintuitive to what people think with diabetes and carbs. But good carbs with high fiber content can lower insulin resistance and cholesterol. So it's really, really good for you. So when people say, I don't eat very many carbs, they're lying because everybody needs to eat carbs. So if you're eating fruits and vegetables, you're eating carbs. But the question is, how much carbs do we need to eat? All right. So we're supposed to eat 45 to 65% of our main diet or for the whole day in carbohydrates. Only 10 to 30% in protein, 20 to 35% in fat. I mean, that's a lot, right? So the other problem is we then eat more than what we need. So then now instead of 45 to 65% of what we're recommended to eat, we eat much more than that. So in addition to the percentages, we also need to work on portion control. So what is a serving? We were supposed to get 8 to 9 servings, right? So one serving, which is 15 grams, is one slice of bread, one apple, 1.5 cups of veggies, depending on the veggies, 3 cups of air-popped popcorn, or 2 small cookies, or a cup of sugar-free pudding, or a piece of chocolate. One piece of chocolate is one serving. Right? Is that crazy? Like, we can eat 9 pieces of chocolate, and that is our whole carb portion for the day. And that is not anything that's healthy for us. So that's why we really have to pay attention to what we're eating, because we're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to have a snack, and that snack is a little box of chocolates. Well, that just is your whole daily, portion of carbs, plus whatever else you ate. All right, so this is from this health.gov Nutritional Guidelines. And this is, you can go online and print, and this tells you what percentages you're supposed to do. Basically, any adults, we need 130 grams of carbohydrates. So you do 130 divided by 15, that's going to be your 9, right? Of that, we need to get at least 30 grams of fiber for it to be healthy for us. And we should probably get more, 35 to 40. Some people do like a all plant-based diet, and they don't do, meats, and that's another story. But basically, if you think about the amount of carbs that we get, or next time you eat, go look at the box and see how many carbs you're getting from each of those things. All right. So I'm going to just give us some ideas about how how to be healthier with our carbs. And then you guys also think about ideas that you can share too, all right? So if we can avoid processed carbohydrates, especially refined grains, that is probably one of the best things that we can do for our health. Because that is in everything. That is really, really hard. So that's like the best thing to do, but then also that's one of the hardest things to do, right? Because everything that we eat pretty much has like refined grains. However, if we use pasta, try to go to like whole wheat pasta instead of like white flour. Whole wheat bread instead of white bread. So that might be a small change that we do something a little healthier, and then the next time after a couple of months, we go to something a little healthier than that. So it's always kind of exciting then. It's kind of like, you know, going to a different city and you try different restaurants. Sometimes you might like it, sometimes you might not like it, right? But it's also kind of exciting to be like, okay, let's go to the supermarket. Instead of buying the same Wonder bread that we've always bought, let's try a different bread that's a little healthier and take that time to read the labels. Educating yourself on healthier food choices is really awesome because there's so much on the internet now. The glycemic index, it's a great topic that we can talk about another time. That tells you how fast something burns through your system. So if you eat table sugar, it's going to hit your system in minutes. But if you have palm sugar, it's a lot lower glycemic wise, and it takes longer to burn. So that might be a little better sugar for you. Let's see. Go for natural complex carbohydrates with higher fiber. That's an easy thing that we can really always try to do. Now it's kind of funny because IDEA, which is a big fitness conference, they just did this research that people looked at cookies, and if the cookie had textures in it, then they thought that cookie looked healthier, which actually is true because the healthier things do have more texture because your body has to grind it down to let it process through your body, right? But they actually say that mentally they think that makes that cookie less tasty. So I don't know, you know, it's like we've been trained our whole lives that like fine flour and very fancy, you know, things have to be silky and smooth, right? So we have to kind of like rethink what we think about stuff like that. Another thing is hidden sugars. It's in everything. So we have to look and try to find where the sugars are to see where we can take them out. Another thing is hydrations. Always drink water. If you're hungry, drink water first. And then if you're still hungry, go eat, right? Because a lot of times you're trying to get a quick boost of energy, but a lot of times it's just because your body is dry. And hydration is really important. Okay, let's see. Now this is an interesting one. Identify when you have high sugar foods in your life. What are the occasions that you do this often, right? So that is something that might be a really good trigger to figure out what sweets do you enjoy? Do you have a lot of candy nearby, or do you have a can of soda nearby? Do you always have dessert after dinner? Does eating a piece of chocolate lead you to eat the whole box of chocolates? So like figure out what are your triggers and when you eat sweets, and then try to make these strategies to avoid them. Find alternatives to sugary food. So this is easy if you are really trying to change your mindset to say, not that I'm denying myself of having that donut, but that donut is just not worth it to my body. So sometimes you have to really it's not just finding the alternatives, but it's changing your mindset to be like, okay, I want to have that. I want to have the protein shake because that's going to give my body good energy for exercising instead of something like that's starchy and not good for you. The other thing I don't buy a lot of at all is low-fat foods, because a lot of times when they process all of this fat out, they're replacing it with something, and it's nothing healthy. So are there any other things, any other ideas that you guys have for being better with the carbs?
Well, you made the suggestion of if you feel like you want something, I don't know if you said something to eat or something sweet, but I always get a glass of water first. And what that does is it delays that thought, because sometimes I find all I really need is some kind of flavor in my mouth.
Right.
And I like to get grapes and put them in the freezer, and then I can just pop one and then go on, and it keeps me away from other things.
Right, right.
Struggle though, but I find that it works, and sometimes it's just a delay, and other times I forget about it altogether and don't eat anything sweet.
Now, we were talking about this last week about kind of like why we eat, right? Why we snack, why we self-sabotage, right? So it's like, yes, are you eating because you're hungry, or are you eating for another reason? What is that reason, right? So do you guys have anything that you took away or learned from this? Anything that's going to help you going forward? I don't know. Was it helpful?
Well, this list is what I'm looking at that you just put up, because my note was to understand what complex carbohydrates are.
Oh, good.
Get that list of them and the ones with high fiber, and see which ones I can increase in my diet.
Perfect.
Other than fruit, because
Yes.
I have a hard struggle with fruit, but
Great.
it's all the beans.
So now, obviously, I'm trying to cut down the amount of information that I'm giving you, because I want you guys to kind of have like a little brief overview of all this stuff. So good, now that you know that you want to get complex carbs, and those are the things that you want to get, you can just Google it. That's really easy, because there's tons and tons of information out there. And then also the fact that you need more fiber and more starchy complex carbs is awesome. Awesome, awesome.
Does oatmeal have fiber in it?
Which one? Oatmeal. Yes. So oatmeal has fiber, depending on if it's processed or not. So you're better off getting like full regular old oats that are like just rolled oats. Yeah.
Right.
And what I do is I do them in my refrigerator at night. Have you ever done refrigerator oats?
No.
So you take regular oats, like rolled oats, you put them in a mason jar or a cup or bowl or whatever you want, and then you put in whatever else you want, like bananas or nuts. You can put in blueberries. You can put in...
So you're making like a granola?
No, and then you pour in milk. So I put in like almond milk or nut milk or oat milk, or I also sometimes even put in old coffee. So you can put in whatever liquids you like, right? And then you can put in whatever sweetener you like.
Oh,
so it could be honey. Yep, and then you stir it up and you put it in your refrigerator, and overnight it comes out like in the morning cooked. So it's not really, you don't have to heat up the food to cook it. It actually just soaks up all of the liquids, and it makes it like a oatmeal that you can eat.
And then you just eat it that way?
Yeah.
You're not cooking it?
Yeah, you don't have to cook it. I mean, if you want to, you can put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds to heat it up so it's not cold. But I actually like it cold. I just pull it out the microwave, and then I just eat it up, and it's nice and easy. I'll send out an article about the overnight oats, because that is something I actually do like doing a lot at home.
I just usually make regular oatmeal and just throw some raisins in it.
Yep, you can put in raisins. Now, if we can get away with things like processed oatmeal, like that comes in a packet with sugar, that is better for us.
Oh, yeah. Avoid that.
I don't eat that crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And regular, so many cereals are processed and have a lot of sugar in them. So you got to caution on those.
Yep. Yep. So any sort of the hidden ones are of course, you know, even if you try to take it out, a lot of times I think we still connect the treating ourselves with sugary foods, right? So it's like when you are treating your kid, you take them for ice cream. Or, you know, like growing up, it's like, okay, you did a good job, we're gonna have pizza, right? Like we tie in those connections of getting these like processed foods as something good. And we have to form that connection of that these things are not good for us. So the more that we think about it and talk about it and research about it, that's what is then cementing it and replacing the years and years of the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So, quick poll. I'm going to see if this polling works. This is an anonymous poll, so just tell me what you think about this today's session, whether it's too much information, not enough information, needs more information, or if it was not helpful. So, too much information, great, needs more information, or was not helpful. We got 2 people voted. They are anonymous. Well, Joe, you only get 1 vote.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
Taylor, sorry, I fell asleep, so I missed most of yours.
Well, Lenora, you don't have to vote. 1 more person voting. 1 more person didn't vote. All right. Well, if you don't want to vote, you don't have to vote. So we had 2 people. 2 people liked it, so that was good. You know, if you guys like this, I will continue. You know, this is actually interesting for me to put together this information because it cements things that I know, but also for me to explain it to others. So that's really a kind of a good thing. Yes, Dara?
I found it interesting. I mean, I was in Weight Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
I was Lifetime 2 times.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness.
So I came and went back. And now this man.
It wasn't my fault.
His fault. It's all his
She
fault.
likes desserts.
He's the original Cookie Monster. We always have 3 or 4 packs in the cabinet, and it's hard to pass that stuff up. But anyway, my point is, I found value in what you're doing. So I appreciate you taking the time to put this together, because what it does is it makes me kind of take another look at what I'm doing, because so many things I'm kind of on automatic and doing the easy stuff. And, you know, we're doing, like, well, Joe's doing the Zumba, and sometimes I do Zumba, and, you know, the chair, I just have a problem with my knee sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
it's too hard for me. But I walk first. I walk in the morning, and then I do your class. And then sometimes I'll walk in the evening too, and then get a little swim in periodically. So I guess the point is all of that is necessary. You got to kind of combine everything.
Yes.
But if you don't understand what you're putting in your mouth, then you sabotage the good stuff that you've done with the exercise.
Exactly.
So I think this is a good reminder, and I appreciate it.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's so important. It's like what we put in is you know, is stuck in our bodies, right? So, and if we don't have enough fiber, it doesn't take all the bad stuff out, you know. And then if you put too much bad stuff in, it doesn't matter how much fiber you eat to take it out. It's going to be in your body somehow, right? So we do need to make sure we put in good fuel for our body, because we don't want to put, you know, lawnmower fuel in our car. We want to make sure we put in whatever octane that is recommended for our car, right? Oh, good, good, good. I'm glad. You know, I was a little discouraged because I don't know if people are interested in this, but it is something also for me to be like, okay, yes, before I reach for that piece of bread or baked item, whatever, is it worth it,
In
right?
terms of your format, are you looking for us to wait till you're done to ask a question, or like I did, raise my hand?
Oh, you can ask questions throughout the whole slideshow. If you have any sort of
Okay, I
questions,
wasn't sure, and I
yeah,
had
go
to
ahead. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that.
say anything.
Yeah, no,
So,
save stuff, because I don't know if I'm going too fast or if you guys had any questions. So whatever you have questions, just let me know, because then by the time at the end, you forget them, right? So feel free to ask me any questions throughout. Basically, I want you guys to stay with me because we're going to go into the discussion, oh, shoot. I was trying to finish up earlier this week. I actually had a bunch more things that I wrote that I was going to talk about, but I just skipped over because I wanted to skip and get us to our discussion. So let's go to our discussion. I'm going to stop recording so that people aren't, you know, getting our conversations. Now, I said good carbs, but really what we need to go is think about natural carbs. So what natural carbs will you go for? So let's break into discussions and talk about this. Let me pause this, stop recording.